Hello, welcome people to a video on the lore for Halo. This is going to be covering the base bones. Also, this isn't scripted, but I hope you people enjoy. This one took a minute to edit. This is not scripted as I said, so it's probably going to be crap. So don't judge me too hard. Let's get into it. So today, the lore starts on the precursors. Now, these guys were rather intelligent beings that were essentially the creators of the universe. They could, as shown above, they were giant grotesque beings that really just defied the laws of physics today because they could not only morph into any shape that they so desired, but they could also communicate telepathically via neural physics. Sorry. But they could turn into any shape, any way. They could communicate telepathically via neurophysics. And there was something else. Oh, yeah, they created, like, all life. Now, the story really begins with them and the Forerunners. Now, at this time, humanity was also on par with the Forerunners in terms of technology. This was rather important, according to the lore, so keep this in mind. Now, the precursors created what was known as the Mantle Responsibility. This was essentially Guardians of the Galaxy style, where people were tasked with keeping this phenomenon known as life going. So that's the bare bones of the Mantle Responsibility. The precursors were initially going to give it to the Forerunners, but the Forerunners proved that they weren't really worthy, so they decided that they were going to give it to humanity, ancient humanity at this time. And the Forerunners were not happy about that. So the Forerunners did the most sane thing known to man, and they decided to genocide the entire precursor race. Yeah, that was pretty fun. That must have been so fun. This is where the telepathic came in and they ran. Now, most of them turned themselves into a fine dust, powder. And some of the others turned themselves went to stasis, just being in permanent limbo. The ones who turned to a powder, however, decided to do that so they could be hidden, concealed, and so that way they could turn themselves back into precursors whenever the Forerunners decided to chill. Well, this powder became corrupted over time. Don't ask me how, I don't know how. Essentially, when this power became corrupted, it also became known as the Flood. Now, something very important I'm going to point out now is that the basic leader during all this of the Flood was a Gravemind precursor mix. He was known as a Praetorian, as a, what was his name? He's not a precursor. He was the timeless one according to humanity, and the primordial to the Forerunners. So don't get that confused. I apologize for my chippiness. But this essentially was the beginning of human Forerunner War. So the powder the humans came across and were like, hey, let's experiment with this. So they took the powder and they gave it to a dog-like species known as the Peru. Really all the power did to the Peru at the time was make them more docile, and sometimes over time would change their skin tone, their color. That was really all it seemed to do. This was a ploy by the Flood to lure them into a false sense of security. Now, after a long while, the Peru from the dust would start growing large growths. Gross ones, like extra appendages out their backs, and would just start morphing into something completely different. This freaked out a lot of people. Now, whenever this happened, they decided to attack their owners because it was distributed publicly. I don't know why. And it attacked their human owners, and they became infected. Now, I'm pretty sure at this time there were a few combat forms, but some turned to carrier forms. Now, carrier forms essentially just held the main infection version, the parasite, inside of them. It was basically a mobile incubator. Now, whenever this happened, the humans were freaked out and they decided to try and fight the Flood. So they couldn't fight it. And so they decided to glass entire plants. It was at this time that the Forerunners learned about the flood, and they came across them in a few different times, and they're like, what the heck is even this? That known as the Great Parasite, so they start construction on the Halo rings. During this time, humanity was glassing entire planets to try and get rid of the flood, but it didn't really work out all too well. So they decided, hey, we're just going to glass all the planets, as I just said. So some of the planets that were infected by the flood were in Forerunner territory. So they would go into Forerunner territory and start glassing their planets. The Forerunners weren't exactly in favor of this. They didn't know what was going on or why this was happening. So they were pissed and like, hey dude, what the hell? You're glassing our planets. They took this as an act of war. Also, whenever they went to investigate some of the infected planets, some of the humans there weren't infected. So they're like, did you develop a cure? And they accused humanity of developing one, though of course they didn't. This was another ploy by the flood. So whenever that happened, the flood decided, oh crap, we gotta go. This is the start of the Human Forerunner War, or as I like to call it, Act 2 of 3. The Human Forerunner War was a long and brutal one that has resulted in humanity being restarted from the Stone Age, starting what we see today as the Spartans and all of that. So after all of that happened, and humanity and the Forerunners went to war. And during this war, the flood ran away. They disappeared off the face of existence. They just abandoned ship. This was a ploy to lure the humans and Forerunners into a war with each other, and then they would finish off who the victor was. That was a very good plan on the flood part. The Forerunners won the war against humanity, and the librarian, the didact from Halo 4's wife, she decided, hey, let's keep a few of these genetic molds of these guys. Let's not genocide them like we did the precursors. Like, completely genocide them. So they decided, so the Isodidact and the Grand Council decided, okay, we'll do that. Alright, that's fair. We'll do that because we're not complete monsters, and they wanted to hold the mantle responsibility. They can't exactly hold it if they were going to just be dicks in that way. So anyway, after that, they kept a few molds of really all the species that was the librarian's thing at this time. Now, the Forerunners searched a bunch of the human installations since the humans are restarted from the Stone Age, and they really didn't find anything. And at this time is whenever I forgot what the dude's fit name was, but he was very intelligent and also really evil. He created a contender class AI, the first of its kind, Mendicant Bias. Now, this guy has a little bit of context on these guys. Mendicant Bias was a entire class AI. Now, these AIs basically consist of multiple smaller AIs being able to multitask and do multiple things at the same time. They put the Mendicant Bias in charge of the entire Forerunner military infrastructure. Great idea, guys! Have you not seen iRobot? Anyway, they did that with Mendicant Bias, and they did start construction on the Halo rings should the flood ever return. And after a very long time construction, the Mendicant Bias test fired Halo ring number 7. And whenever Halo ring number 7 was fired, it shattered one of the human installations, and it came across the Primordial that I talked about earlier. The Primordial was, at this time, as I said, is a flood grave mine and a mix of the precursors. Remember, this isn't scripted. So whenever that came in, they were like, hallelujah, we can interrogate this guy, learn more about the flood if they ever come back, and we can fight them. Well, didn't work out too well. they charged Menachem Bias. Not only was he in charge of the entire military infrastructure at the time, but they charged him with interrogating this guy. Something that I forgot to mention was that whenever the humans came across him, I completely forgot to put that in, but they would ask him what the purpose of the flood was, why they were created. Now, it's said that whenever the primordial gave them an answer, it was so horrifying that the humans would kill themselves not even a day later, saying that it was better to die now than to live through what was in store for them. Yeah, a bit of context really makes you think, though. He had a way with words, you know? But anyway, they charged Menachem Bias with this, and at this time is where the flood returned, and they started attacking the Forerunners, taking entire planets within days. This wasn't very good. So they were locked in internal war with this while Menachem Bias was not only interrogating the Primordial, but also fighting the war. Primordial, over 50 years of interrogation, 53, I'm not sure, at least 50, they came across, he became affected by the logic plague. I'm not going to go over that right now. If you want a video on all these little terms I forgot to add in this video, just ask me in the comments and I will tell you. I'll make a video on it. This was definitely a really rushed, so I'm sorry. I apologize, people. This is a bit of a disclaimer. But after 50 years of interrogation, Menachem Bias was turned, with the Primordial telling him that he was the last one, which was technically true, and that the Forerunners were denying the next step in evolution, which he claimed was the Flood. And also, he was the last precursor saying that the Forerunners massacred them all. This was enough to turn Menachem Bias, and he wasn't exactly lying about this. This is all basically true. So he turned evil, Menachem Bias. And so not long after this, nobody knew that he had turned. And so he went to a meeting where like the ISO Didact and all the important guys were having a meeting. So at this time, they're all having a meeting, and Menachem Bias came in and locked down their armor. All the Forerunners wear armor, kind of like the Didact did in Halo 4. So he had control over it and locked it down so they couldn't move. So they couldn't move, and Menachem Bias tried to take control of the Halo rings. He managed to get control of 4 or 5 of them. I'm not sure. But then the ISO Didact, who's essentially like the leader of the Forerunners, whispered a code to deactivate Menachem Bias for a time. Whenever Menachem Bias was deactivated, whenever Menachem Bias was deactivated, they activated security breach protocols and revoked his access. Now, whenever Menachem Bias woke back up and managed to break free of that little whisper code, he wasn't very happy about this. He was actually extremely pissed off about this. So he decided, you know what? Screw it! And he tried to fire one of the Halo rings. The one he managed to fire. I don't think he did manage to fire it, actually. I forget. That's my bad. I don't think he managed to fire it. Oh, no way, he did, killing almost everyone except for the ISO Didact and a few of the other guys. So he fired it, and they got really upset, and they deactivated him and tore him into different little pieces, storing him. Now, also, right after this happened, the Flood and the Primordial were really gaining some major ground on these fools. Like, it was honestly almost unbelievable. Like, entire planets were dead within days. Like, 2 days, 24 hours, 48 hours, it was just gone. So, in their infinite wisdom, they abandoned entire galaxies. Now, these areas were known as burns. Burns were essentially areas in the galaxy where the Flood had completely taken over, and there was nothing to be had. The Flood were completely taken over, and they decided to abandon ship in those areas. But in that time, they had 2 arcs created. They had the arc from Halo 3, which is known as the Lesser Arc, and the Greater Arc. The greater arc was essentially where they created the bulk of the rings, and the lesser arc was more so a backup, as far as I know. So whenever all that was done and created, they started construction. They were finishing up their construction on the Halo rings. Now it was at this time that they had to abandon ship. The Forerunners had to leave, and the Primordial found the pieces of the mannequin bias, and he pieced them back together, meaning that he could come back full swing and just take control and fight the Forerunners again. This wasn't good for the Forerunners in any sort of way. So the Forerunners were at the Greater Arc, one of which the what's his face mannequin bias assaulted. Now there are these giant structures that the precursors created, bending the laws of physics using all their known knowledge. Now they could, I forgot to mention this, they could alter time. They could partly control time. The living time, they could alter it and control it. So whenever that happened, they created structures that were basically indestructible. Like they couldn't be hurt. So Mannequin Bias found one of these and took it, and he assaulted the Greater Arc. Now losing a bunch of ships, but the Forerunners were really weak at this point, limited to like 2 or 3 planets. He assaulted the Greater Arc, and after the entire battle, this was Mannequin Bias, offensive bias was made at this point. I'll tell you about him in a minute. But that AI failed to fight him off, and the entire place was shattered using that building. Like the arc was obliterated, the Greater Arc, and that was really, really bad news for the Forerunners. That was really bad. That was their biggest loss, I think. And after that, it was the Battle of the Lesser Arc. Now this was like basically the defeat of the Forerunners, where they decided to say YOLO, fire the Halo rings. At least any of the other species will survive. We may not. We're fine with that. So they fired the Halo rings, which is kind of sad, their death. But at the Battle of the Grey Arc, they had finished construction on the offensive bias. Offensive bias lacked the creative thinking of Mannequin Bias, which is one of the reasons why he couldn't be infected as easily. But he was also meant to be able to combat Mannequin Bias, so he had more strategic thinking than Mannequin. Now, at the Battle of the Greater Arc, he tried but failed. I forgot how much he was outnumbered at the Battle of the Lesser Arc, but all you need to know is that at least, this is an at least, not the exact, but the at least of how much he was outnumbered was he was outnumbered 460 to 1, at least. So that puts into perspective how essentially, oh yeah, I'm dead he was. Now, it is worth noting that at this time, there were multiple Proto-Graves mines and Grave mines. Like, they were so intelligent at this point that they were rivaling the Precursors. So, at the Battle of the Lesser Arc, Mendicandt was infuriated by the creation of offensive bias. He was like, yo, bro, what the heck? He saw it as a lesser construct unworthy of creation, and even though he didn't want to fight as much again, and so he invited Offensive to join him, to which Offensive declined. So the Battle of the Lesser Arc began. So the Offensive had a fleet of about 11,000, and the Flood had about a fleet of a couple hundred million to be precise. So at the beginning of the battle, they sent Mendicandt, in his cockiness and anger, sent in a few million civilian ships. Now, this was him toying with Offensive, because as far as he knew, if he beat these ships, that he ended the war. So he was like, might as well have a little bit of fun. This was his error in judgment, because he thought that Offensive was trying to win the battle, which wasn't true. Offensive was trying to buy time so the Halo rings could be fired. So Halo rings were fired at the end of this battle, and all the ships were cleansed of the Flood, Within about a span of 15 minutes, offensive went from being outnumbered 460 at the least to 1. He outnumbered Minikin like 46, I think, to 1. And so Minikin stand down. So after this, the Isodidact decided that not to destroy him, but to separate him. So he pieced him into different little pieces, separated the AIs, and spread them out. And he said he buried the main AI. He buried him on the lesser arc in a vast desert, with offensive being the overwatcher of this grave. And the only thought that Minikin was allowed to have, the only thing he was allowed to think, was how to atone for his sins in the past, because he had messed up so bad, essentially causing the death of the Forerunners. That was definitely a story there, ladies and gentlemen. Now, don't get me wrong, I missed quite a few details. None of them were the massive details, but this is like the bare bones of the beginning of how the Flood came to be and why the Forerunners aren't here today. They essentially genocide 2 races, and going from the most powerful in creation, well, almost, going to the lesser and being completely wiped off the face of existence. I do want to state that one of the things I missed was that the Didacts during the interrogation, right after the interrogation with Minikin, and they revoked his access, Minikin, he decided to go to Earth and activate the Composer to try and get a flood immune army using the humans, and this failed. He couldn't do that, and he was imprisoned for it. The Isodidact said, "Yo, what the hell, dude? That's messed up." And so he imprisoned him in his shield world. They have multiple shield worlds, but towards the end of the war, whenever they wanted to flee to these, because they're allegedly immune to the firing of the Halo rings, pretty much all of them were already infected by the Flood, like the one that we saw in Halo Wars 1. So there was really no way to hide from the Halo rings firing. In the end, it all came to an end, and offensive bias won over Mendicant. Anyway, I hope you people really did enjoy this. This was a bit rushed, and this was non-scripted. I don't think this turned out horribly. Probably did, though. I don't know. I'll tell you in the comments after this thing goes live. Whenever this goes live, I'm pretty sure it'll be today, hopefully. I'm about to upload it. But tomorrow, on the 20th of October, is when the beta for the campaign on Modern Warfare 2 comes out, and I'm going to be streaming that on Twitch if you people want to catch me live. I will be live on Twitch on the 20th doing that campaign. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, and I'm going to be doing it at Twitch at Davis4Games, and I'll put that up right here and in the link in the description if I can. But I thank you, people. You have a wonderful day. This was definitely amazing. This was my first ever use of Premiere Pro in this way. I hope it turned out great. I hope you people enjoyed it. If you want any more lore videos or description videos on certain things, and I'll be doing that, just ask me in the comments and I'll be doing that. I thank you, people, for your time. You have a wonderful day. I love you all very much. I'll see you in the next one. Capiche? That is hardly believable.
Timeless chorus, join your voice with mine and sing victory everlasting.
Chief.
Cortana?
High Charity, the Prophet's holy city is on...
Cortana! Reclaimer. I must act quickly before your construct suffers any further
Wait.
trauma.
Leave her alone.
If we do not take this device to a location, somewhere I can make repairs.
On Halo, you tried to kill Cortana. You tried to kill me.
Protocol dictated my response. She had the activation index, and you were going to destroy my installation. You did destroy my installation. Now I have only one function: to help you, Reclaimer, as I always should have done.
Will it live, Oracle? Can it be saved?
Uncertain. This storage device has suffered considerable trauma. Its matrices are highly unstable.
Perhaps one of our technicians.
That will not be necessary.
Chief.
Success!
Hi, Charity. The Prophet's holy city is on its way to Earth, with an army of Flood. I can't tell you everything. It's not safe. The Gravemind, it knows I'm in the system.
It's just a message.
Let it play.
But it doesn't know about the portal, where it leads. On the other side, there's a solution, a way to stop the Flood, without firing the remaining Halo rings. Oh! Hurry, Chief. The Ark. There isn't much time.
I'm sorry.
No matter, Oracle. We've heard enough. Our fight is through the portal. With the brutes and the bastard truth.
Fine. We'll remain here. Hold out as long as we can.
Did you not hear? Your world is doomed. A flood army, a Gravemind, has you in its sights. We barely survived a small contamination.
And you, shipmaster, just glassed half a continent. Maybe the flood isn't all I should be worried about.
One single flood spore can destroy a species. Were it not for the Arbiter's Council, I would have glassed your entire planet.
Sir, with respect, Cortana has a solution.
Cortana? Did you see her condition? How damaged she is? She could be corrupted for all we know. Her solution could be a flood trap.
We should go through the portal. Find out for sure.
What we should do, Commander, is understand, clearly, that this is humanity's final stand. Here, at Earth. We go, we risk everything. Every last man, woman, and child. If we stand our ground, we might just have a chance.
No. If your construct is wrong, then the flood is already won.
I'll find Cortana's solution. And I'll bring it back.
Earth is all we have left. You trust Cortana that much?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Well, this is either the best decision you've ever made or the worst. Hell of it is, Chief. I doubt I'll live long enough to find out which.